1187 AD. The Crusaders have held Jerusalem for nearly 90 years. Entire generations were born and died never knowing it any other way. But one man looked at that city and made a decision that would shake the world. His name was Yusuf. History would call him Saladin. Chapter 1. You were nobody.
Let's get one thing straight from the beginning. Saladin was not born into power. He was not a prince. He was not from a famous dynasty. He grew up in the dust of Tikrit, just another boy among many. He was born in 1137 in Tikrit, to a Kurdish military family. His father, Najm ad-Din Ayyub, was a soldier, respected but not extraordinary. And here's the ironic part. Young Saladin had absolutely no interest in becoming a warrior. He preferred studying Islamic law and theology. He was, by all accounts, a quiet and studious kid. But his uncle, Shirkuh, a powerful military commander, saw something in him. And in the world Saladin grew up in, what you preferred rarely mattered. The world doesn't care about your plans. Saladin entered military service under his uncle Shirkuh, who commanded for the rising ruler Nur ad-Din of Syria. Here, in the heat of the camp and the dust of the marches, his real education began. Strategy, logistics, loyalty, things no book could truly teach. In 1164, Nur ad-Din sent Shirkuh and Saladin on a military campaign to Egypt. The Fatimid Caliphate there was weak, crumbling, and everybody wanted a piece of it, including the Crusaders. Armies converged from every direction. Egypt became a chessboard, and Saladin was being taught how to play.
Through 3 campaigns, Saladin watched, learned, and fought. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but he was always the one people trusted. And then in 1169, his uncle Shirkuh died suddenly. The Fatimid Caliph in Egypt needed a new vizier. They chose Saladin, deliberately, because they thought he was manageable. They were wrong. Chapter 3, From Vizier to Sultan. And it was. But Saladin's position was incredibly fragile. He had to balance 3 forces pulling him in different directions. The Fatimid Caliph he technically served, his boss Nur ad-Din in Syria who didn't fully trust him, and his own ambitions, which he kept very, very quiet. What did he do? He played the long game. Slowly and carefully, he replaced Fatimid officials with his own people. He rebuilt the Egyptian military. He won over the population through fair governance and competence. No dramatic coup, no bloodbath, just patience. When the Fatimid Caliph died in 1171, Saladin ended the Fatimid Caliphate entirely, peacefully, and unified Egypt under Sunni Islam. 2 years later, Nur ad-Din also died. And just like that, Saladin had no master. From a nobody in Tikrit to the most powerful man in the Muslim world. And he was just getting started. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, or more accurately, the Crusaders in Jerusalem.
Crusader kingdoms had existed for nearly a century. They were entrenched, fortified, and backed by the full military might of Christian Europe. Taking them on was not just a military challenge, it was a political and religious declaration to the entire world. Saladin didn't rush. For years he worked to unite the Muslim world first, because he understood something that many leaders before him had missed. You cannot fight an external enemy while you're divided internally. One by one, emirs and sultans came to his side. In 1187, he had unified Egypt, Syria, Mesopotamia, and Yemen under his leadership. He had built one of the most formidable armies the region had ever seen. And then the Crusaders made a mistake. Saladin lured the Crusader army under King Guy of Jerusalem into waterless terrain during the brutal summer heat. By the time the sun reached its peak, the knights were exhausted, surrounded, and about to be broken. The Crusaders were exhausted, thirsty, and completely surrounded. It wasn't just a battle, it was a collapse. The most powerful Crusader force in the region was destroyed in a single day. City after city fell in the weeks that followed. Acre, Jaffa, Ascalon, and then walls October 2nd, 1187. Saladin stood outside the walls of Jerusalem, the city that had been the entire goal, the symbol of everything. Everyone expected what had happened 88 years before, when the Crusaders first took the city.
Saladin did something that shocked the entire medieval world. He offered terms, safe passage for every Christian inhabitant who could pay a ransom, and for those who couldn't pay, he paid for thousands of them himself. Saladin went and christened his worst. Christian pilgrims were allowed to continue visiting. The city was taken, but not burned. Even the Crusaders' own chroniclers, people who had every reason to hate him, wrote about Saladin with admiration. One described him as more merciful than the Christian kings of his time. He was the enemy, and they still called him noble.